Our agenda for today is to extract the data from flat file and to SAP BW. So we'll see different types of extraction procedures inside the BW. First of all, we are going to extract the data from flat file, and then further on, when we look into the code extraction, we'll talk about extraction procedures used under the BW from ECC source. That means now we are considering non-FCP source, but later on we'll consider SAP source. So that is the one thing what I have to take it today, like into this entire session. So I'm just taking one topic so that it will be easy to you to retain all those information at your end, and you won't find any difficulty when you are going to practice on these things, because modeling in one part you need to understand very perfectly. So here what exactly I'm going to do is I have sources, right? I have a source that is nothing but your, we call it in SAP BW called source system. So this source system is divided, we know that, in two parts, and this time we are going to utilize this source system as non-SAP source. So this non-SAP source as flat file. Alright, so once this non-SAP source is going to be taken up, it is mandatory to put this flat file. At this time of demonstration, we are keeping it in the local directory. Otherwise, in the real time, it should be there into the application server. So in general, I'm just talking about this flat file has to be there into the application server. So wherever the application server is there, their local directory will have this file. Alright, so I will have this flat file into our application server. So application server, we will have this flat file. So that is my source system category when I'm talking about. And then I'm going to take that file into the data source when I'm talking about BW environment. In the BW environment, when I'm going to deal with my data source, there I have option that I can map this data, or you can say I'm going to browse this into this data source. So data source label, I have an option by which I can extract the information from the local directory. So either from the application server or from the local directory we can do that. As I'm saying, it should be in general in real time, it will be onto the application server. For demonstration purpose, because we don't have application server, so for demonstration purpose I'm just using the local directory. Alright, so local directory, I'm using it over here, and I'm going to replicate the data into this data source. Not to be forgotten, the data actually going to be into this PSA. Data load will happen into this PSA. When I'm doing this extraction process, data source is one instance which contains this PSA. So first of all, it will enter here and get into the PSA. Alright, it will be stored into this persistent staging area. This is my staging area, persistent staging area. So temporarily, the storage will be happen inside. The storage which comes inside the PSA will be temporarily. So my data extraction process from the flat file will be done into it. Once it is done, I can further go for further purpose. Like as I mentioned yesterday, we will have the modeling here. So modeling, the modeling of my info object, we carried out. The modeling as I instructed yesterday, it will be carried out based on the source. So PSA has the data. The info object should be created based on that. And then we are going to extract the data into the PSA. First of all, I have to create a source system, then my info object, and then data source. This is the process flow. We have to follow it. All right. Then once the data is into the PSA, by assigning the my info object into it, we are ready to load the data, or we are ready to transform and load the data into this info providers. At the top we have info providers. So once the data is in there, we are ready to take this data from this PSA to info provider by following the stage of transformation and DTP. So there are two or more stages which is going to come over here, called transformation and DTP. By using a transformation, we'll apply the business rule over here, and by using a DTP, we'll load the data. DTP means data transfer. So both the cases will come in between when the data load will processed from PSA to info provider. Remember that these are the cases we have to consider, and this is how the process flow we need to follow. So let me sketch out one flow over here, how exactly we have to deal with it. The first step, what I am going to do is, step 1 is this. I'm going to create the source system. Alright, so we are going to create a source system first of all, step 1. And step 2 is we are going to create my info object based on my source. So that is my step 2. And once this is done, we are going to put this data from the source system to data source into the PSA. That is step 3. Once the data is extracted in PSA, we are going to process with a transformation. That is my step 4. And once we are done with that, we are going to process my data transfer process, which is going to be the 6th one, or I can say this is my 5th one and this is my 6th one. Before that, before doing this transformation in DTP, once the data is loaded into it, I can say I have to go and I have to create my info provider first. This info provider will be created. Okay, that means fourth step. First we do the source system define. Okay, the source system will be defined here. Okay, that is my first step. Source system will be defining. That will be first step. Then second step will be my info object creation based on the source system. Then third will be my data source load, extraction of data. So here I can say my extraction process is happening. Extraction of data is happening. Alright, so when the extraction of data is happening, I can say here extraction of data. So extraction of data will be happened into this and this process, and once the data will be extracted, doesn't matter it is a SAP source or non-SAP source, we will have always have this flexibility, where you need to understand that this flexibility come across with the dependency of the source. Anyway, so I can take it this thing as SAP sources also. It is also for the SAP source. Not to be forgotten, it is also for SAP source. Alright, So it doesn't matter what source we are having, but we are going to work on today with non-SAP source. So this I'm going to work on this today. So anyhow, like I'm just highlighting this one. This is the area where we are going to work today, and later on when we look into this source systems, so we'll see that how exactly it is going to be carried out into this in this particular area. All right. Anyway, so we are going to consider the source system, which is going to be a non-SAP source, flat file, to the local directory, and to the application server, where here in this case I will say I have to subside this one, because this is totally dedicated to my this is totally dedicated to my non-SAP sources. All right, so application server. These all things will become across when we are working with non-SAP sources, not SAP sources. All right, so let me consider this, and we're totally this one is like totally dedicated with my directly the source. So SAP sources are directly communicating into the data source by using your extractors. By using your extraction methods, we are actually doing this extraction. Let me consider this just path, actually the process flow path, which is going to be happen over here, and this flow is like this is happening for the case of non-SAP. Alright, and this is SAP sources, and by using extraction of data is happening over here, and here I'm going to use extractors. So I can say I will have extractors here, BW extractors. By using a BW extractors, we are doing extraction process in this SAP scenario. When we say source system, which is nothing but a SAP source. So at this now, I'm going to enlist some of the SAP sources. ECC is my one, like SAP ERP, and SAP, let's say CRM and SAP SRM are another one, where ECC is nothing but your SAP ERP. Understand this? So these are the things which we have over here when we talk about the entire process flow of my data, like data source. All right, so extraction is going to be carried out over here from this to this, where I have considered this path. I'm going to take a look on this, how exactly it is going to be happen in this case, and then further on we'll see like further steps. Okay, so these steps need to be followed up at our end, and this is my process flow which is generally happening. Okay, so step 1, step 2, step 3. Generally what happened when in this case of source system, we replicate directly into the data source, and then we load the data into the PSA. So anyway, we identified the source and definition. If you know that, we'll create the info object based on that, and we replicate the data into it. So we can follow the same step for both the sources. Now it's time to look into the tool side to have a good information about it. Get into this, where I have SAP GUI to launch my BW NetViewer environment. Well, this is SAP Logon application, or we call it SAP GUI. The version what we are using is 7.3. Well, I have an instance of BWs over here, which is 7.4, powered by HANA. Anyway, so we are going to consider this, and we are going to load it the NetWeaver application environment. The client number, username, and the password should be entered over here, and also the language in which you are going to work on. So language is one of the important thing which allows us to utilize this environment into any language criteria. If you want German, you can use German language. You can specify the German code. If you need Chinese, you just specify the Chinese code. If you need Japanese, etc., you can specify that. As I mentioned earlier, we have a key code used mostly called RSA1, which is going to take us to the data warehouse workbench modeling, where I have already specified the source system over here. And generally, when you consider the process flow inside it, or when you consider the flow of your creation of your objects into this modeling section, when you do this creation of source system and when you double click on the source system, it directly goes to the data source. So that is what it shows, like, okay, once you are created with the source system, you have to go to the data source and you have to create a data source into it so that data can be extracted there. Alright, but before we do this process, we must have to make it ready my info object. So that's why I have taken info object as a second step, and then we can do the data source creation. Why? Because here I'm working on the source system which is dedicated for files. So I need to, because I have to use my flat file, so I'm just going to consider the file system as a source system. And I have created one dedicated source system called ffss_arun for my utilization. So I'm double clicking on it, it goes, and you could see that data source for this source system. So what will be the data source for this source system? So generally, we are not going to create directly the data source, as we haven't created objects, info objects directly into info object category. We have to create info area, then catalog. The same like that, here, I don't have to create a catalog, but at least we have to create a folder like an info area to separate my data sources. So I'll right click and you could see that the option which brings up here is create application component. So I'm going to create an application component over here, which is nothing but like a folder which is going to take up my data sources inside it. So it separates the data sources based on the project. So application component. So I can say it's an application component. So APC, application component, and this is for, like, I must have any file over here, and I just want to check it in the database. We must have some file over here, and mostly flat file. The recommended file system is my comma separated value, so I'm just going to consider my comma separated value for EMP. So this source is needed over here. Let me show you what exactly this source having it. So here is my EMP, and this source have this data. Alright, so this source have this data, and we have employee ID, name, address, phone number, city, country, salary. So based on that, we have to create my objects here. Alright, so this is my source, and this is what I have to do the extraction of. So this is CSV file, comma separated value file. So I have to specify my name over here. APC, application component, or generally what I considered, we always used to prefix Z. Being as a developer, what we used to do is we used to use Z as a prefix before creating any object. So let's say it's a application component, we'll say Z APC underscore EMP, the source name, and it is nothing but application component for EMP. Alright, so I'm just going to create it, as it is not like Like as it is just a folder, it's not an object which need to be activated. Like it's not an object which is going to activate it. It's just an instance which is going to work like a folder. You could see that application component for EMP. Even that we haven't validated and activated, it is present here. The only in case of the object which is not present, or any object you are creating inside the BW environment, that need to be activated. This is just a folder, like a folder, so we don't need to do the activation. Once the application component for EMP has been appeared here, we can right click onto it and it will bring it up my two of the option, create application component and create data source. That means we can create another application component into this component. So application component into another application component is possible. We can create, like let's say I have a business scenario. I'm considering a business of Tata Groups, where we all are aware about how Tata Groups operates. So Tata Group has several like sister concerned company in that particular group, and those sister concern company, are those primary companies are like Tata Motors, Tata Steel, Tata Consultancy, Tata Software Services, etc., etc. So lot of things are there in Tata, like in that Tata corporations, or in my Tata, the entire Tata group. So let's say one application component is dedicated saying that Tata group. Inside the Tata group, I'm going to dedicate another application component for Tata Motors. One is for Tata Motors, one application component for Tata Steel, to separate the data sources for all those industries or all those branches of Tata organization or Tata groups. So whatever company comes under the Tata group, we are dedicating a separate application component for that. So that's why we have an option over here to create application component into the existing application component. The same scenario is also possible for info objects. Like when you go and create an info area, you can create another info area into it. You can always have another info area inside it. So that that is the way, like it deals like folder under folder, like folder and the subfolder inside it. But I don't have to create my another application component because my scenario is straightforward. I have to create my data source. So my data source is going to be, I'll say data source. So as we know that we are going to prefix with Z, DS will the data source for EMP, where you could see that where the data source is going to be mapped up, from which source system it is going to be considered. The source system, it automatically comes over here is FSS Arun. That means this data source is going to take data from this channel, this source system channel. And then I have to select what data source, data type I'm going to use it. So the this time the EMP table, what I'm going to do is, let's consider this point. When I'm going to take, let's say, this EMP, I'm just going to say copy and paste it over here. So instead of saying copy, I'll say master data. Master data. All right. So master data. So in this case, I just need to open my Excel and for the master data and desktop. I'm just opening up, and I'm going to remove this transaction fact from here, and I'm gonna save this one in this master data. See, in the actual EMP, I don't have. I have this sales or salary. Salary part is there, but in master data case, we don't have it. So I'll tell you what exactly the master data case is over here. So not to be worried about it. In this case, it is possible. So like I'm just going to take it what type of data as this time. So we are going to take it a transactional data. So transactional data means transactional information will be there. But we have another data types like master data text, master data attribute, hierarchy, and segmented data. So depending on the requirement, we are going with that. Where master data, I said that file is master data attribute, not text. I'll show you what exactly master data text was, what is my master data attribute and hierarchy. But most of the time, we are working with the transactional data. So I'm just selecting my transactional data as a data source data type. Where template, object type, and name. I can take my templates from the existing one. I can specify like my template over here, and that will bring it up for this data source. But I'm not taking at this time. We are going step by step. I'm just creating it. Well, you could see that it will bring it up onto the right hand side, your data source fields, where the general information field will have short description, medium description, which is nothing but say EMP data. So I'm just considering this one on this one for all the cases. I'm going to utilize this EMP data as a short description, long description, and medium description for this data source, where we are done with the general information tab. Now I have to go for extraction tab. This tab is very, very important because this allows me to bring it up or map my file into the BW environment so that it can take data. Alright, so as of now you could see delta process. The delta process is very, very important inside the BW to load the data or to initiate the data into the BW environment.